There you are.
Here I am.
There you are. Still with the mustache.
I know. I took the liberty of leaving it on. Yes.
You know what? Yeah, I'm glad you did, Mr. John.
Yeah, my wife used to say, because at one time I considered getting contact lenses, and my wife, whom I love dearly, and I think she loves me, but she said, "Don't get contact lenses. You have a nose made for glasses." I wasn't sure how to take that, but I think I knew how to take that.
Yeah, I'm sure that must be a compliment. Are you still married?
Well, I don't know.
Are you still married? Are you still married?
I'm still married. Yeah, 40 years. So
it must be good. It must have been a positive compliment.
Yes. Yeah. I guess. I don't know. She put up with it.
Mr. John Musker, you are a legend among so many animators. We are so thrilled that you have come to join us today. We have a lot of people from all over the world who've come on because they love your films that you were the director of. And you also have been inspiration to other people. Films like Aladdin, A Little Mermaid, Hercules, Moana. So there's so many films. It's of course my daughter, who is definitely listening today. She didn't come out to see me, by the way. She came to see you. So I just want you to know, thank God you're here. She wouldn't have come on. I said, "Oh, John Musker's there? Well, I'm coming on." I said, "What about me?" "Yeah, you're fine. But John Musker?" So I want to say thank you for coming here. Now, I know that tell us a little bit about you went to Cal Arts.
I did go to Cal Arts, yes. I'm from Chicago originally. I'm grew up there in a big Irish Catholic family. I have one of 8 kids. And my father worked for the phone company there. My mother was a homemaker. She somehow had, 6 of those kids before she was 30, I think. So it's a little scary. But so I was always interested in art. I always drew. I made, in high school, I made Super 8 films, not animation, but little live action shorts with my friends. It was sort of, I was always interested in I realized when another friend did a film, who just sort of was a regular guy in school, I'm like, wait, you can make a movie with a Super 8 camera and people will see it and they'll laugh at your jokes and things like that. So that was kind of hypnotic to me. So I started making films with my best friend back in Chicago. In the meantime, I went to a Jesuit high school there. I went to the Loyola Academy, which is known more so. It's the Jesuit high school where Bill Murray went to school. He was a senior when I was a freshman there. So I saw him in the talent show. I could tell you how he did when he sang "Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley" with the stand-up.
How was he?
He was very good. He was very good. He was totally sincere. No winking at the audience on this one. I think maybe before and after. I didn't really know Bill, but I saw him in this show. Also, then years later, it was funny. Another noted alum from my high school, Chris O'Donnell, the actor, he also went to that school. And it was funny because when we were making Hercules, we auditioned Chris to be Hercules, and he came and read. And I told him, I said, "Hey, I went to Loyola, when you were at Loyola." And he said, "Oh, really?" He said, "What class were you in?" I said, "Well, I graduated there in 1971. And he said, "Oh." And I said, "Well, what's the story?" He said, "Well, I was born in 72. So we did not cross paths there.
Yeah, but, and he didn't get that job either.
He didn't get the job. He had the wrong answer. I'm sorry.
That was the wrong answer.
Yeah,
you always said I was right there.
He did. But so I went to I went to Northwestern back in Chicago in Evanston, Illinois. I was an English major there, and I had been drilled into my head by the Jesuits that you should get a well-rounded education. So even though I thought I was going to go into some kind of art-related field, I felt like it was sort of self-taught. So I would force myself to read the great books and to be more versed in a broader humanities thing by majoring in English. So I did that. And at the end of that time, then I heard that there was a training program for Disney. In the meantime, I'd been a cartoonist on the school papers and all that sort of thing. I sent a portfolio off to Disney because I heard they were training young animators. The Disney studio for years had not been taking in young people. So all the population of animators were all in their 60s. They were retiring, they were leaving, they were dying, they were doing whatever. And if Disney Animation was going to continue, they had started an in-house training program to develop the next generation of animators. So I thought that seemed like a really intriguing thing. I'd always loved animation. I was a cartoonist, yada, yada. But so I sent them a portfolio, and then I got rejected by them, and they said, "You don't draw well enough, go away." And I was like, oh, shoot, now what? The plan A did not work. And I sent a portfolio to Marvel Comics, I thought, because I was interested in that. They rejected me too. They said, "You don't draw well enough." And I'm like, oh, no, I'm 0 for 2 here. What do I do? Then Disney wrote back to me and said, "Well, maybe you want to send your portfolio to Cal Arts because they're just starting up an animation program, and where you have it." And they sent me a little literature on that, and I wrote to them.
They wrote you a letter saying to go somewhere else.
They did actually,
That's really
which is
strange.
nice of them to do. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it was
very
funny.
strange.
Well, they were trying to develop this Cal Arts program. Disney was funding it in part. The Cal Arts was founded by the Walt Disney Foundation. Really, it was Walt Disney's long-standing dream to have an art school that combined all the different disciplines. So that's what Cal Arts was. And Walt Disney died in '66, and really Cal Arts began after that. After his death, his estate and his trust created Cal Arts, like in '68 or something like that.
Wow,
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so this is '75, and so I said, well, even though I swore I would never go to graduate school for fear of becoming a permanent student and never facing the real world, I sent my same portfolio that I sent to Disney to Cal Arts, and I got accepted into their program. And their program was taught by some Disney that a lot of Disney people went through. So I said, well, I'll go there for a year and see what happens. So I went there for a year. And then the Disney studio at the end of the year, our teacher said, put your work up on the walls. We're going to have a little show. And they've invited the Disney Studio Review Board to come in and see the student work. And they saw my work, among many others. Where there's classes, this is the first year of this program, so there were only 25 of us in the class. But basically, they liked my animation and they liked my drawings. And they said, come work for us. And I didn't want to tell them, you know, you rejected me a year ago. But so I wound up actually just working for a summer as an intern there. And I went back to school for a second year because I felt like there was a lot I didn't know. So I went there for another year, and then I came to Disney at the end of that second year. So I started at the Disney studio. The week that Star Wars came out was my first official week at Disney, which was in '77, May of '77. And then I worked there. I retired, you know, about 2 years ago. So I worked there for 40 plus years. And
But wait a second, who was also in your class? I heard
well,
you-
yes, my class was that first year's animation class included people like John Lasseter, Brad Bird, Tim Burton was a year behind us in school. So Tim was a friend of mine at school.
But is Tim from America? I thought he was British.
No, he lived in Britain. No, he's from Burbank. He's from right up the street.
No.
He went to Burbank High. Yeah, he was on the water polo team. People don't realize this, but Tim was sort of a closet athlete despite his, you know, elfin appearance at times. But yeah,
I thought it was something British. I don't know why. Wow.
Well, he lived in Britain, and he married Helena Bonham Carter for a number of years, and his home was in London, and he made many of his films in London. But he is as Burbankian as they come. I mean, he is.
Wow.
Yeah, he's a Burbank. So he went to Burbank High, and he went straight from there to Cal Arts. He was at Cal Arts for, I think, maybe 2 years or 3, maybe 2 years, I think. And then he came to work at the studio and was in the animation department with me. And he worked on The Fox and the Hound as an animator, which I was also working on back in the 80s.
It's something to do with, I think, well, you know, believing in destiny in a way. I mean, you got rejected from something, and then you actually worked there in a different way, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I do think it helped. It was we were lucky, all of us, John Lasseter and me and Brad Bird was in our class, and that Disney had the door shut for so long. Yeah, just as we were emerging from school, they were trying to say we need people to learn from the greatest animators who ever lived, sort of. So it was great timing. He was the only studio doing animation, and they did one film every 3 or 4 years, you know. So it was a very, you know, a very small pool that we were in, but that was what was cool about it. And then only through the course of some years, then Jeffrey Katzenberg and Michael Eisner came to Disney. They thought it was moving in slow motion. They're like, hey, what is this animation thing? We don't even understand it practically. But Jeffrey was a quick study, and he sort of put his foot on the gas and really pushed us, and, you know, and was a fast learner and was kind of our executive producer. And so then things really started accelerating, and out of that acceleration came movies like, you know, when we did, you know, Little Mermaid in 1989, and then Beauty and the Beast I was not involved in, but that followed that, and then Aladdin followed Beauty and the Beast, and Lion King followed Beauty and the Beast. So one after another, these films seemed to kind of build on the previous one. The staff was getting better. It was like a repertory company of actors. You know, all these same animators were developing over the course of films, playing different roles. The animators are like the actors. And so we were learning as we were making these films. Just as the Disney studio in the 30s, they were stepping up their game where they had only done shorts, and then Snow White was the first feature that they did in 1937. And then after that, they did this amazing run. They did, you know, Pinocchio, Dumbo, Fantasia, and Bambi, all within the space of 5 years. And then the war came and everything changed again. It was like the virus. Now the whole studio suddenly was doing training films. The foreign markets disappeared because of the war, and Disney went through a crisis. You know, they almost, you know, they barely stayed alive during the war and had to regroup after the war. And then they did Cinderella in 1950 and were kind of going again. And then they, you know, Disneyland came along in the 50s and made the company solvent, which to that point had always been sort of tentative. So it's been quite a road, quite a journey. And those people that I met at Cal Arts in that first year are still my friends and my colleagues and my coworkers. And they're an amazingly talented and successful group of people.
What would you tell the younger John Musker if you could tell him something when you were just starting? What would you like him to know that he didn't know?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, I still think, you know, even despite the advances in CG and all that, that drawing is a good discipline to learn. Even if you're working in like the computer-generated animation field, to be able to communicate your ideas. I think that is a good skill to try and develop, even if it's in a limited way. Beyond that, I would say to work in animation, it's the most collaborative of art forms, which appeals to me. But I think you do have to learn how to play well with others to succeed in it. So because it is so collaborative, and that's a skill that you kind of learn over time. And I think the other thing is you have to learn to be able to take criticism and make it constructive. You have to really be able to put your work out there and get feedback and then regroup and move forward. It isn't sort of a straight line. It's a bit of a zigzag. It's more of a zigzag than I thought maybe when I started. You write and you rewrite. You know, it's a process. It isn't just a very linear, you go down the track and there's the movie at the other end. No, there's all sorts of threading that you have to do, and you have to look long term at the result, which I think I always did. But you know, it's a 3 or 4 year process. It isn't made instantly. There are going to be, you know, ups and downs during the course of making the film, and even just seeking out the story. In all these films, I would say the hardest part to me of making all these films was getting the story to work. That's harder than the animation part of it, I think, even though the animation is a tremendous skill and not a lot of people have it and all that. But the story just seems like you think, oh, once you've done one story, you can do a million. But every story is its own problem, and it's always been a challenge. But that's what's been fun about it. One of the reasons I got into this was that when I was at Northwestern, they had an animation festival, and Chuck Jones, the veteran director who did the Roadrunner cartoon,
Everything.
Wonderful, brilliant director, he was on a circuit where he went to different colleges and he talked, and he was kind of being rediscovered in the 70s. But one of the things he communicated when he talked was that there he was, and he was at that point maybe in his early 60s, and he had such an enthusiasm for the craft, and he really communicated a feeling like, I'm still learning this thing, you know, I'm still learning it. It seemed like, and for me hearing that as a 20-year-old, I felt like, wow, that's kind of an interesting artistic field to go into. It combines so many different things. And here's somebody who's done so many things, and they're 60 years old, and they feel like they still have something to learn. And from the outside, some people view animation, oh, it's a tedious thing, isn't it? You're doing it. But to me, it is not tedious. I mean, there's different parts of the process. And I do feel like what he said has been borne out by my own experience. That even, you know, as I aged at Disney and all that, and even now I'm trying to do my own short film in my retirement, and I'm learning again because I'm having to do things I haven't had to do for years, and in some cases I've never done. So I think that's appealing, to always be learning, never be static, be a, you know, a mobile organ, be a sponge. That's the great thing about animation too. You always need to be observing life, your family, both from a physical point of view and a caricature point of view and a behavioral point of view and a storytelling point of view and a communication point of view. You can always absorb and learn more and read and know people and how they tick and enjoy the big, vast, you know, quilt of human life, and then try and communicate that to people through drawings.
Well, you know, first of all, I have learned from my teachers that the more I learn, the more I realize how little I know.
Yeah.
And so the people who are always studying, I always love to learn more because I really think I don't really know that much.
Yeah.
And it's always that way. No, I feel like I'm just beginning to learn. It's a never-ending process. I want to ask you a question. You know, we have a lot of actors who are listening from all over, from around the world.
Oh, right.
There you go. There. I'm feeling better. I'm glad you moved me a little bit. So the idea is that I wanted to ask you, how do actors play in the role here?
Yeah.
How do they fall? How do you use them? What is
Yeah.
their main purpose? Talk about a little
Yeah.
bit.
I mean, really, the Disney features were founded, I mean, the stories, but they're appealing certainly by the writing, by the storyboarding of those characters where you start to map out their behavior. But then the two sort of essential things are the voice actor and the animator who brings that character to life. Now, some people don't even realize, you know, in animation, the voices are recorded before the animation is done. So the voice actors set the template that the animator and the other people follow. So they are the inspiration. They're the seed that the character grows out of. So all the great Disney characters, the voices are a crucial part of that. And they have been since the beginning of time. You can't imagine Jiminy Cricket without, and it was in that case, it was Cliff Edwards was the voice of Jiminy Cricket. And he was known as sort of a, you know, he's a vaudeville performer and a radio performer, but not someone that whose face, you know, in movies. And a lot of the early Disney voices were character actors and things like that. But they basically, the voice, the animator's job is to bring the character to life on paper or with a stylus and a mouse if it's in the CG world, you know, in the computer, to build a puppet and then animate the computer puppet. But the voice actor has to get all the feeling, all the emotion, all the comedy that is then the springboard for the character. So when we're auditioning actors, I mean, sometimes we have used very famous people and sometimes we have written parts. Like when we did Aladdin, we wrote the script for Aladdin, and we did write, we thought of Robin Williams as we were writing the script. And so we wrote the script with Robin Williams in mind, but with, you know, Robin Williams who could do a million different things. We didn't know if we could get Robin Williams. In other cases, like when we wrote Ariel in The Little Mermaid.
Talk about that. That's my daughter's favorite.
Yeah, there was no specific actor. In the case of The Witch, there was one. But in the case of Ariel, we just thought, you know, it was a young story of a girl trying to get independence from a bit of an overbearing father and having this obsession. She was very much a teenager. We really wanted to try and do a film where we caught some teenage angst, as it were, and a certain amount of rebelliousness and conflict with her parents. And that seemed relatable to us and identifiable. And we knew we wanted it to be a musical, so we wanted someone to sing. So we auditioned many actors for the part of Ariel, you know, and we had no one in mind when we wrote it. And but actually Howard Ashman, who was our producer, who wrote those songs and was a brilliant co-creator, he was the co-producer of the movie, he felt that we weren't hearing enough people in Los Angeles who were singer-actors, good singer-actors. So we started having rounds of auditions in New York and Los Angeles. So we had auditions in LA. So it really broadened our pool of actors. So the actors would come in and they would not only do a sample scene or two in the audition, but they would bring in a song to perform. And in the case of Ariel, we heard a lot of Somewhere Over the Rainbow because the song hadn't yet been written that she was going to sing, but we knew she was going to sing a ballad. It was going to be very aspirational. So just to sort of demonstrate their vocal chops, they had to bring in something. And there were a few choices, but many, many people came in and sang Over the Rainbow. So we did hear Jodie Benson ultimately was it. We heard her audition that was done in New York and we weren't there for it. And so they were sending us these auditions and we loved the audition. And then we ultimately, I think we did a callback with her where she actually, by that time the song had been written and she did the song. But one of the sort of disconcerting things I think for actors can be in Los Angeles is when we would be hearing actors and we would bring in actors, the casting people would bring them in and we used to do very long auditions. Then Howard said, no, you can do this quicker. You don't have to belabor this. So our auditions may have taken, 15, 20 minutes for an actor, something like that. And usually we did the scene a couple of times. We pitched the idea of it to them. They had sides of certain scenes. They come in. They would, we talk a little bit and then they would go and they'd be in a booth. They would not be acting with any other actors and there would be someone reading opposite them, just sort of feeding lines and they would feed them the lines. The actors would do the scenes. Usually we had 2 scenes they could do. And they would do it once, and then we would comment, and we would give them notes, and they were not huge notes, but they were just sort of adjustments they might make that, us based on knowing the action of the scene. Maybe, you need to go quicker here. You need to go, what if you want a little bigger? What if you played this a little differently? Or I like what you're doing here. Can you go further that way? Whatever it might be. And then they would do the scene a second time. And it was always helpful for us to just see how they made adjustments. I mean, were they able to do different things, or did they? No, they were locked in on one approach. I'd say we generally liked people who are not locked in. Who
you ask Well, the most important thing for acting is being flexible. And
Yes.
some people are not flexible, and then that means they can't give you what they want because you don't even know what you want.
Right,
It's
right,
everywhere.
right. Flexibility is a huge thing. The other thing that we didn't demand in an audition, and we discovered more as we went through it, and we hoped for it, and in most cases we got it, was animation is a wonderful medium, at least in our case, for improvisation. Because I think Howard came from it at a different angle, because in the theater, I mean, he didn't want, you know, people improvising in his play. He wrote the words, he wanted them to say his words. And not only that, I think he really wanted them to have a performance that he bought off on, and that they would repeat that performance within a certain narrow range, kind of. And I think it was a discovery for Howard that one of the things with animation is you only need to get it the way you like it once. It doesn't have to be repeatable. And in fact, some of the best things in animation are the offhand things, the in-between things. There are times where we've recorded actors where they practically didn't even realize they're on mic, or was something between the takes that we liked to laugh, or this or that we used because it had just such spontaneity, and it was just, it brought something to life. And so we have really loved, and so many of actors have come in, the ability to improvise. So they've done the scene as written, and then there's certain areas, particularly maybe in some comedy areas or that, where there's some physical thing where we really, it becomes kind of a sandbox, and they're really playing. And there's really an element of play, I think, in animation acting.
Wow.
You know, then we say, okay, this is the situation. And, you know, and some people came up with, you know, very fun things. They might be small things, or they might be big things. And it really, and then we would go through and weave those takes together. In the case of Robin Williams, you know, we had reams and reams of material. And Ron and I and Eric Goldberg, who was the animator, all of that got transcribed. Literally every word he said got transcribed, and we listened to it after the fact, and we marked all the things we liked, and we rebuilt the whole scene again. And then and it was still too long, and we whittled it down, and we wrote new lines that went in and out of certain things he did that we liked. Robin was great because he understood, having performed the scene as written, he knew what the story point of the scene was. So even as he went off into the stratosphere, he knew how to wrap it back around so that it still told the story, and it wasn't just completely, you know, off in left field. Or if it went to left field, he found a way to bring it back to the immediacy of the scene. So anyway, much of the recording is done without other actors, which is a challenge for actors. It's partly because if the actors are in the same booth doing, this is Disney features, TV is done differently, I think, but if they're recorded together and they're married together on the track, then if in the course of animation you discover, well, I need more time for this bit of business and I have to separate these lines, and they're overlapped and they're married, that becomes a problem. So there were times when we really wanted to have the actors ricochet off each other. So we would record them together, but we would usually baffle them so that they were somewhat, even though they were looking at each other, there was glass between them. And we would usually record it with overlaps in those cases because we had them separate, but then we would cover it individually as well, sort of, just so we had something, if we just had something where we really needed to separate the lines one from the other actor. But the actors, you know, they get to work with rules. Some actors never got adjusted to that. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, when he came in, he did get adjusted to it, but initially it was very tough for him. And Matthew Broderick had a very tough time on Lion King, I think, when he was by himself in a booth trying to act with a reader, but not with another actor. It's a challenge for an actor. I mean, you know, to sustain the illusion, and, you know, but the best ones, they eventually embrace that system and have fun with it. You know, somebody like a James Woods, you know, he was in heaven, you know, because he loved the improv aspect of it, and he just, you know, went wild. And
what is it that we have some actors who are wondering, what kind of a voice are you looking for, and how is it and what is the way that someone could start in the voiceover world?
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. Like anything, I think, like we say, sometimes we have actors in mind as a voice type when we write the part. Like any acting, we want you know, sincerity, you want truth, you know, even in animation acting. I would say the difference between feature acting and Saturday morning, sometimes Saturday morning I would say push voices more, to do cartoon voices. And I would say generally in Disney features, the voice that people did, there were some actors who were chameleons, but generally a lot of people, we liked it to be relatively close to their speaking voice. And so like any casting, you have to offset people. We had sometimes where like in the case of Princess and the Frog, where we had some actresses who came in and who had such a husky, low voice that they sounded older than the women that were playing their mothers, just from their voice. If you looked at them, there was no question. But
Right.
if you listen to the voice, you go like, whoa, she sounds like she's 40 and she's only 22.
Right.
Our 45-year-old mother sounds a bit like she's 28. And so we're in trouble.
Right.
You have to kind of rearrange that. Obviously, you don't have much control over that. But I would say if you can have a range of acting styles that can go from naturalistic to theatrical
And accents, do you want accents? Is accents now popular?
and accents, if you can do them believably and sort of not hear it. Some people are exceptionally good at, and others are not. But we had a guy like Jim Cummings who can do many different accents and things like that. And he's sort of a character actor who does a bunch of things. We were very lucky when we did Princess and the Frog because we had a few actors come in, and that movie was set in New Orleans, so we wanted our Cajun Firefly to sound believably Cajun, and we had some actual Cajun people do it. And then Jim Cummings had worked in New Orleans and lived there for a number of years, worked in the Merchant Marine, and he worked with a bunch of guys like on an oil rig, I think, and he had the whole Cajun accent down pat, and he could improvise in the accent, within the accent. That's really ideal if you get someone who can not only improvise but stay in character, stay within an accent. In terms of the casting, we have casting directors. Jamie Roberts, over the years, there was Ruth Lambert, and Jamie Roberts was there when I left. I think she's still there. They, certain characters, they do pretty open calls. They go through agencies. They send out sides.
But they do open calls.
Lists.
So there's a way for people who are not doing voiceovers right now to get to these people.
Well, I'd say it helps to have an agent, I would say. So it's tough if you want to do a voiceover and you don't have an agent. So I would recommend as a first step, if you can get an agent, that's a good thing. But it's a catch-22. You can't get an agent until you get a part. You can't get a part.
Right, but there is ways, because I did voiceovers as well. There's ways of putting a voiceover tape together, but realizing there's such a wonderful business being a voiceover actor. I mean,
yeah, there is. I mean, it's not only these Disney, there's not only, feature animation, there's the game industry, there's public service announcements, there's industrial films. There are many opportunities, and some of them have big name actors doing these commercials here, but others are lesser known. And, it's a good field, and it requires good acting. I mean, it isn't just a novelty thing. You really have to.
I find that the acting has to be real. You have to connect to the people.
It has to be real. And, we've been very fortunate. And we've generally with us, one of the things that was to the advantage of, say, the lesser known actors, that they would come in and read. Some of the bigger actors don't want to audition anymore. They went through that earlier in their career, and it can be trying. And they've like, I either hire me or you don't hire me, but I'm not coming in to read. And so we have actors that have been like that. And in some cases, we would take them, their lines of dialogue from another movie they made, and we would animate to that as just our own little audition to get a sense of how it works. Because a wonderful actor, the way you look and the way your voice sounds are two different things. And so you can be the world's greatest leading man, say, but then if you just hear the voice, it may not communicate at all the same way. It just may not, the charisma that's in your face and in your smile may not translate to the voice itself. And I know it could be disconcerting for some actors, because generally when we would have people in audition, oftentimes I would look down at the papers and I would not look at the actors, because I wanted to look at the way, when I was an animator when I began, I was an animator, and you would receive these voice tracks and you'd have to bring the scene to life. And so you want a voice that really creates pictures in your mind, creates a character, and you can see the drawings come to life. So I would be looking down, just trying to hear the voice alone, not being influenced by anything they did, to get a sense of, do I see images? Do I see poses and attitudes and expressions? And if I did, that was a good thing, obviously. But I could imagine an actor looks over and then, here's the director, and they're not even looking at them.
No. You know what? when I learned about voiceover acting, I learned that I couldn't just use my voice, but I had to get my entire body in it.
Yeah. I was pulling this dog up over this fence, and you can't get him over it. So, we have the Mike Doc Kane, who's been our recorder, who's good at, tracking people if they have to move a little physically. But it's a bit of the throwback to radio acting in a way, but where you need to physicalize your performance, and you need to feel that you're doing the gestures that you're doing. And in some cases, you're doing versions of that. You're putting, whatever it might be, strain or breathlessness or panting, or you're chewing on a piece of fruit. We really would have a piece of fruit sitting there so you could eat the apple, and you're saying your line in between munches on the apple and that sort of thing. But I think, you do have to be comfortable physicalizing yourself, not be self-conscious. It's hard to imagine an actor being self-conscious, but I would say we have worked with a few that felt self-conscious doing it. And that's, you want to get over that. You want to just
Well,
embrace.
yes, obviously that's.
You want to embrace the play of it. It really is. There's a great sense of play with voice acting, I think, and I think our favorite actors, and we've loved most of the actors we've worked with. They have enjoyed the process, and you know, we do cover these scenes. You know, often when we record the scenes, we might do it in 4-hour sessions. We would have just and the actors wouldn't see a whole script usually, so that could be just concerned with some. But we'd pitch the idea of the story, the broad arc, and this is where the character's going. But then they would get sides, they would get scenes, and we would do a few scenes at a time because the movie was being rewritten over the course of a couple of years. So it's like workshopping a play. I mean, the script is very much a malleable thing, and if we gave you a script today, well, 6 weeks from now, it's in a different version of the script. So over the course of making a movie that would take, say, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, the actor, depending on the part, might come in, multiple times. In some cases, revisiting the same material as the story's changed. In other cases, just continuing to do sequences deeper into the movie or wherever now we're recording, and it may be out of order, all those kind of things. But it was, I think, actors generally. Emma Thompson really enjoyed what she got to play. We worked with her on Treasure Planet, and we recorded her in London, and she was pregnant at the time. And so, if she was doing a live action role, that would have gotten in the way of that. Also, she was the captain of this ship in Treasure Planet. She was we kept saying, you're like an RAF pilot or a commander. And she loved that because in a live action film, it would be hard for her to have that kind of a part.
Absolutely.
So it's just, full bore, the RAF wing commander. And,
right. It's a whole.
Just great fun for her. And she just, and she was fun too because she was a writer as well. So we would sit in the booth before she recorded, and she kind of had her lines in front of us, and she rewrote a bunch, and we sat there with her and workshopped new lines. She's like, and I had written, there was a line that she was supposed to say. She was deriding this crummy crew of borderline pirates on the ship this guy had assembled. And I had written a line, this is a sorry gaggle of ragamuffins. And then Emma was sitting there, and we're kind of going over the lines, and she's just eating her little cucumber sandwich, and she's saying, I thought we might adjust that to, what about a parcel of, a ludicrous parcel of driveling galoots. And I said, that's much better than ragamuffins. Let's go with your line. So, and we did that with her. And that was, she was great. She was amazing, wonderful. But I would say the voice actors are a key part of the process in terms of breaking in and all that sort of stuff. You can get an agent. Some of the casting directors take general meetings with actors sometimes, and they will, you can come in on a meeting just so they could get a sense of, know you, are you okay? There were a few actors here and there where we would approach our casting director and some famous people, and they would tell us, you know what, life is too short, because these actors were known for being difficult, impossible to work with. They were huge names and they had interesting voices, but they just said, please listen to me. You don't want to work with them. It's just
it's probably one of the Hollywood. Well, one of the Hollywood rules, which I talk about, is that I've been involved where producers have said, let's not bring this actor in because they're too difficult.
Yeah.
And difficult is out. Difficult is not in anymore.
Yeah, I know. It's tough if you're trying to get a job. We had, it was funny in the case of Little Mermaid, we were having a tough time casting the witch for Little Mermaid. We had written the part with Beatrice Arthur in mind, actually.
Oh, I love your singer there. I love that.
Yeah, well, Pat Carroll ultimately did the voice. But B. Arthur's agent wouldn't even send her the script because we described the witch as having a B. Arthur type voice. And she thought that was an insult to her client. So she never gave it to her. I don't think B. Arthur ever saw it. So B. Arthur was off the table. So we were auditioning a number of actors in Los Angeles and New York. Ultimately, the two of the finalists that we had, whose voices we liked, one was, not finalists, but people that we just thought might do it. Charlotte Rae, actually here in LA, did a very fun reading of the character. And then Elaine Stritch in New York was going to be doing it. And so Howard was working with Elaine in New York. We worked with Charlotte Rae in LA. But then they were going to do the song. It had been written, Poor Unfortunate Souls. The problem was Charlotte Rae could not do the song. It was too demanding. She just couldn't do the song. And then Elaine Stritch, Howard worked with her, and Howard loved Elaine Stritch. She was an icon for him. I think she had been drinking at the time a little bit, so that was a bit of an issue. And she just was sort of undirectable for Howard. And she wanted to change the song. She wanted to speed parts up and slow parts down and move it all over the place. And just Howard was like, no, it's not going to happen. Forget it. Although we stole from Elaine Stritch, I still feel guilty, but it is what it is. In her audition, when she auditioned for the part, she said the line, we had written the line, life is full of tough choices, isn't it? And she, in her reading, in her audition, said, life is full of tough choices, isn't it? and she put a D in it, and we just loved that. So we stole that. So Pat Carroll, who ultimately then came in and read and did the song and did a great job on the song, we asked Pat, yeah, do Isn't It? I mean, it's funnier than Isn't It? And so she did. So I feel guilty, but Elaine, thank you for that.
No, Elaine is a legend. And I tell you, it's one of my favorite characters, those songs.
Yeah.
Oh,
Howard Ashman, he was those characters. When he wrote those songs, he would perform the demos of the comic ones. So he was Sebastian in a way, not only writing the lyrics, but then performing.
Who played Sebastian? Somebody wanted to know.
It was Sam Wright played Sebastian.
Right.
Sam Wright, a wonderful actor. He'd been in some commercials. He's based in New York. He came out of those New York auditions. I think he had a college roommate who was from Trinidad, so he kind of channeled his roommate's voice when he was doing it. He's not from the islands at all.
Right.
And, but he had been in the Fruit of the Loom commercials. He was a dancing grape, I think, for a while.
Right. I know Sam Wright. Yes, of course.
Sam Wright. He's a wonderful guy. And but we heard him in New York, and we loved his voice, and we loved his generally. Like I said, they had to perform the song to get the part, and he did that, and he was wonderful. So Sam was Sebastian.
I want to tell you, since we're talking about somebody, I just want to bring up somebody who was a very dear friend of mine who sang the title song on Aladdin, the wonderful actor, Mr. Bruce Adler. He is amazing. And you said that originally you thought that the opening was going to be sung by Robin, but he's not the type of singer.
Right. The original idea in Aladdin was that, and I think it was based on Howard had written a treatment before Ron Clements and I, and who should be mentioned in all this. Ron Clements and I are co-writers and directors, and
right.
Our partners. We worked together for 35 years. Ron just retired about last year from Disney, so I should be saying we on many of these things. But
yes.
When we wrote the script, the idea was that peddler at the beginning was going to be revealed. He was going to sing Arabian Nights, the kind of threading Once Upon a Time song, which Howard Ashman had written. But he was going to be revealed at the end of the movie to, in fact, be the genie. He had just been playing a part, and boom, he turns it, and we reveal, oh, he's the genie.
Oh, well, I see.
And that was the idea for a long time. But then the movie was long, and we were previewing it. And then once Aladdin and Jasmine got together, Jeffrey was like, come on, the movie's over. Get going, get going. Jeffrey was very impatient. He was like, so he no longer was that. However, he had this very tough song to sing, and it had to be sung really well. And Robin was a good singer, but he didn't have the kind of range that song demanded. So we were trying to find a singer who could sing in a big, broad range. And we found Bruce Adler in New York. I believe we auditioned him in New York. And he was amazing. And so he didn't do any of the spoken lines, but he sang that song, and he sounded enough in the vocal range of Robin. And then later, I believe that he was the voice for Clopin in Hunchback of Notre Dame, which we didn't, Ron and I didn't do. That was done by Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale. And in that case, he did lines as well as the song, The Bells of Notre Dame. And he did this, soaring rendition of it. And brilliant actor.
Brilliant actor, great singer, came from the Yiddish theater, came his father's family are very famous. And I played many, many times with him, and he died very young. And
he died very young. Yeah, it's a shame.
Tremendous, tremendous, kind and wonderful talent. I want to ask you a question. Where do you think voiceover world is happening? What is happening? How do you see the voiceover world? Is it going well now? I think
it's going well. I mean, animation as a whole, I think, is going well, so that helps drive the voiceover world. But I would say things that need voiceover acting, like I said, the gaming industry going great guns. There's no shortage of needs there. Animation, in terms of the box office in the last few years, in the top 10 films, of all films, live action animation in the year, nowadays, I would say, at least a third, maybe in some cases half of them are animated features.
Right.
So the industry's going well. It's an unfortunate thing, but in this time of this virus, the one productions, or the one area of production that's still moving forward that I'm aware of is animation, because the studios have enabled people to work from their homes. So work on the Disney features is ongoing. Work on these Netflix features is ongoing. There are production houses in Canada and in India where people are now working out of their homes. So that's going on. So, and the streaming services, Disney took their movies off Netflix, and they said, we're doing our own streaming services. Well, the good news for animators in a way is that Netflix is desperate for animated content, so they're producing a number of original features. So as a field that needs voiceover acting, there's a great need. Now, of course, there is this basic challenge, which frustrates many actors nowadays, I would say, that, do they only want to hire name actors? Or unknown actor can I be there? And I would say, in my own experience, it has been a mix. There have been parts that have been cast by big name actors, and there certainly will be that. There are parts, and then we have cast people that are working, sort of working actors, but who are not household names, who are not stars, but who are, you know, everyday actors. They you know, they work in theater, they work in this, they work in that. They aren't, you know, on the people list of the top 10 box office people, but they're great, wonderful actors.
Absolutely.
And there are people that are, you know, that haven't had that range yet and are new to the business and all that. It really depends, I'd say, on the part. Even like say in the case of Moana, you know, we wanted an open call. We wanted to find someone, hopefully in that case of Polynesian descent, who could voice the character. So we had an open call in the South Pacific, and we started in New Zealand, and we went to the islands. We did auditions in Samoa, and then finally in Hawaii. And out of that process came Ali'i Carvalho, who, you know, had barely been in a school play. So it can happen that somebody who is completely unknown can make their way into the business, but it's hard. It is hard. But I would say one of the other things that we do, but again, it's tricky for people to get into this. We would do readings of scripts when we were in-house. So that began on Little Mermaid, where we actually had our script, and we did a reading with actors around the table.
Wow.
So the casting people brought in actors who weren't necessarily going to do the part, but they were good actors, just so we could hear the lines spoken and get a sense of how it would play. It wasn't really to cast any of those people. And in fact, none of those people sitting around the table were ultimately in the movie. But then as time went on too, in the more recent days of Disney, some of the executives didn't like reading scripts, and they would rather hear the lines performed by an actor to evaluate the script, not so much the actors. So there would be readings. So our casting people would bring in actors who would read the scripts. And I think they may have gotten paid a day rate or something like that. But if you can at all meet with the casting director and say, I'm willing to do that, and they have a sense of what kind of voice you have, if you were able to somehow get in the room to read, to be in these readings, it certainly doesn't guarantee that you're going to get a part, but it gets people to know who you are.
Well, it's called getting in the room. It's getting in the room.
You're getting in the room, and in some cases, we did a reading on Moana, and I think Jamie Chung, who's an actress who had done various things, was playing Moana in our reading, and then the guys who were going to direct the next film heard her voice, the guys on Big Hero 6, and they said, wow, she would be good for what we're doing. And ultimately, I think she got cast in the movie.
You know what? I believe that every single person that's actually listening to you right now should realize that if you're listening, voiceover is a possibility, because I talk about acting, and to be an actor is to do voices, to do commercials, to do everything. You know, to make a success in your life is to do a little bit of everything. And voiceover is a beautiful opportunity for people who have voices, which everyone has, and distinctive voices. And
distinctive voices are particularly good. If you have a voice where your natural voice sounds a little different than other people, in animation, that could be a very good thing.
Right.
Really
I remember, I want to tell you a quick story. There was a girl in Germany who had this very, very funny laugh, and everybody made fun of her. I mean, everybody in school. She couldn't get out of school, and now she's the ringtone. She's the one that people use it because she's so funny. And I always say the thing you dislike about yourself is always the gift. The thing you don't think is good about you, that is actually the best part of you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was funny. Like when we cast Buddy Hackett to be in Little Mermaid, he really wanted to play a character. We had written the part. We wanted Buddy Hackett to be Buddy Hackett.
Right.
And, you know, he's got that very unique, he's from Brooklyn, and he's got that Brooklynese and all that. But he came in when he first came in to do the part, and he put on this voice that he thought was the character. And we had to really twist his arm to, you know,
just be Buddy Hackett.
Buddy, be you. We want you to be you. And he did that very reluctantly, but it was exactly what we wanted.
What is the most satisfying personal thing for you for having done these films? What is that?
Well, I think their longevity is certainly one of the things that when I got into this, you know, some of the movies that we worked on, you know, my friends and I would be out at lunch at a restaurant and say, oh, yeah, we just worked on this movie. You know, we were first starting at Disney. And they said, oh, when does that come out? And we're like, well, it came out last year, you know, and they didn't. And now with the success of these films piggybacking on one another, that they reach so globally that the idea that you can write a joke or you can try and communicate emotion, you can try and make someone cry, and you can do that, and they're not necessarily a member of your family, and they're in another part of the world, and it's 25 years after you wrote the joke and people still laugh. I would say that's been very rewarding, and that's something we anticipate. You don't know you know, if what you do will ever be seen by anybody, will it ever be remembered? So the idea that I was a part of many, many people who helped bring these stories and characters to life. And that even now my grandchildren, you know, I've got 2 grandchildren, and they're starting to learn about these films. And
unbelievable. You know, you've had a huge impact. Of course, you and your partner have had a huge impact, because I personally had to go with my daughter and my son to see your films, but you made them also for adults. You didn't just make them for kids.
We did. We really, when we were making these films, we tried to make them for ourselves, really. We were
Right.
thinking about kids. And in fact, I read a quote, Disney was that way too, Walt Disney. I think I read a line from a story meeting after they had I think it might have been an internal screening of Bambi. And one of the people in-house who wrote a note on it said, well, I think the kids will like it. And Walt was very angry reading that. He's like, what kind of crack is that? The kids will like it. Because he never felt that he never wanted to talk down to children. Right?
No.
It was really to make a film. And so, yeah, our films work on different levels. I mean, there's a broad comedy aspect to some of these things, but there's a wit and hopefully to the dialogue and emotional.
You know, I have to say, there's always been a moral story. There's something connection about life and about love and about the environment. There were beautiful songs. You gave a lot of wonderful children a great start.
Yeah.
There was a message. There was a message you gave to people. It wasn't something frivolous, but something that still stays with them. That's why it's still resonating.
Yeah, well, I think like the story, like in Little Mermaid, you know, there's the appeal of just, you know, another world that you don't learn to let go, and a daughter being, you know, challenged and trying to find a way through all that. That story is an ongoing classic story. It does not go away. It does not live on.
No, it doesn't. I like one of the things that we always did. There was something about the fork. There was a thing about that.
The dingle hopper, yes, the dingle hopper.
Yes. What was up with that? Is that something you came up with?
Yeah, that was my word for it. Yeah, we just thought it would be funny to, because she has these words, that she has things that she doesn't know what they are, and she's informed. Our story idea, Ron Clements and I, was that Scuttle, and I think this was based in part on Ron had like a brother-in-law who was a know-it-all who got everything wrong all the time. So he was like, why don't we make this Scuttle? Why don't we make this seagull? He gets everything wrong. It's just a source. It's a comic engine for the movie. So then we wrote with that in mind. So I think I invented the word dingle hopper for the fork, you know, and all that. And so it was great. So we, you know, so the opportunities for comedy of having to comb her hair with the fork when she's in the human world, it seemed very rich. And we did use live action actors to shoot reference footage for us. So Sherry Stoner, a wonderful improv comedian from the Groundlings, we shot footage of her as Ariel working to Jodie Benson's tracks before the animation was done. And there she was with a fork sitting there combing her hair. And she did great, funny improv comedy stuff. And then the animator, Mark Henn, brilliant animator, took and looked at Sherry's stuff and used some of what she did and some of what he did. And the storyboard artist, you know, also came up with bits of business. But generally with animation, we try and make the story be told visually so that you could turn the soundtrack off and you could still understand the story.
Right,
So,
because that's why it plays in every country.
And so it plays in every country, and it plays for children as well as adults, because the picture is telling the story. And even if you don't understand all the words, you get it. So now when I see these videos, it's still a little shocking to me, but you know, they've got their 18-month-old propped up in front of a big screen TV and Moana is playing, they're watching the whole thing, you know. I feel like that's a little on the young side, and yet I feel like there is something that communicates because of the visual storytelling.
John, I want to tell you that Instagram only allows me 1 hour.
Yes.
And I feel like I've only just said hello to you.
Okay.
So if anybody has any questions, please email me and I'll have John. John, you're a gift. Thank you on behalf of all the millions of children and parents who were able to see your beautiful films, that you put something in. You made a mark on people's hearts with your songs, with your talent, and with your wanting to care. You cared very much. It took a long time to make it happen, but art takes a long time. So
it does. Well, thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, John Musker. Thank you all for keep going, and you never stop. So thank you. I'm waiting to see the next film, and we're going to be talking to you again. I hope we can call upon you again.
Okay, yeah, we can. Okay,
Take care.
Take care. Good luck.
Bye-bye. Anyway, yes, bye, John.
Bye-bye.
Anyway, John Musker, isn't that beautiful animation? But what it really came down to was the fact that everyone here could go after an animation. I mean, you have a voice. And if it's really funny or full of accents, you know, I think it's so great. great opportunities. I want you to realize that, you know, he's Oscar nominated many times. His films have won Oscars, and just beautiful. So I want to thank him because we're here and celebrating the art series for Instagram Live. Tomorrow we have Paolo Genovese, who is an incredible Italian director for Italy. Also coming up next week, next Sunday, we have someone who is really she's an incredible performer, artist, actor. Her name is Anita Dobson, and she has a husband that many of you may know. His name is Brian May. He's the original member guitar, wonderful player on Queen. So that's coming up, as well as A.R. Rahman is coming up, who won a few Academy Awards with Slumdog Millionaire. We want to bring artists together, and I believe that you're an artist as well. And you have to think of your life as a piece of art. And I believe that everyone's life is a piece of art, and make a difference and make an entrance and find your voice and say something. Make sure that the world hears what you've got to say, because if all of you had the courage to give your gift, the world will instantly become better. Don't hide behind something. Don't complain. Don't blame, but actually become the person that you were born to be. And you do that by letting go. And remember, pressure like this is great because it makes you become the person that you were born to be. This is an important time to reach out, to tell people you love them. There's a lot of people who are feeling very alone. Talk to them. I will see you all tomorrow at 11 o'clock at the same place, same time, with our incredible Paolo Genovese. Then the following weeks, please get on my website. I also have classes, online acting classes, life coaching classes. If you're interested in finding out, please go to bernardhiller.com. We're also having a big international global masterclass for all the artists. And we will have April Webster, casting director of Star Wars, and Nick Valango, the producer and writer of Green